Hi everyone, my name is Rikki Held, and I'm going to talk a bit about the Held v. Montana youth climate lawsuit, my own involvement, how I got involved, and where this case is at now, and as well as other climate litigation going on. So, Held v. Montana was filed in March of 2020, and it's filed by 16 youth plaintiffs. And we filed against our state of Montana for contributing to climate change and harming us plaintiffs and acting unconstitutionally. And we're represented by three law firms, McGarvey Law and the Western Environmental Law Center in Montana, and then also Our Children's Trust, which has a bunch of youth-led climate cases around the world. There are two federal cases in the United States and then different state ones, such as in Montana. So a quick backstory about me and why I'm a plaintiff on this case is I'm from Broadus, Montana in the southeast corner, and there my family has a ranch in the Broadus Motels. And I feel very lucky to have gotten to grow up on the ranch and just be a part of the ranching operations, moving livestock and building fence, haying, all of that, and being around my community, learning the history and values there. I'm really interested in environmental science. I studied that at Colorado College, and right now I'm teaching science, the sciences, biology, and chemistry to secondary school students in Kenya. But I really found my love for science working with hydrologists who have studied the Powder River that runs along my family's ranch. They've studied since the 1970s. And so even when I was little, I got to go out with them and do topographic surveys of the river. And I got to connect that science with my own home. So I've been interested in Earth systems and climate change for a while, but we also have to act on that science. And so when the opportunity came to be a plaintiff on this case, it really felt like the right thing to do. So being a plaintiff, I got to tell my story, and everyone is affected by climate change in some ways. It might just be wildfire smoke in the air, or your house flooding. But I told my story of how myself and my family and community are impacted with things just like wildfires and wildfire smoke, air pollution, extreme weather events, um, and all of these things. So submitted like pictures and then my story as well to the court and got to testify at trial. This was a flooding event that happened a few days after the trial. My dad and I had never seen anything like it on the ranch, and that was just from a few hours of rain coming down from the hills. So there are a lot of different events like that, and even in my short lifetime, I've seen those changes happening to my home. And I think it's important to talk about these stories, especially from places like these ranching communities where people are so closely tied to the land and our livelihoods depend on the well-being of the environment so closely. Um, so yeah, these are some of the climate-related impacts listed out. Just everything like water variability of the river that affects livestock and crops, and and just the ranch. So why be part of this case? Our Montana Constitution, it outlines um, some things like we have the right to a clean and healthful environment, and so just being part of this case and trying to protect those rights and those values is really important to me. And even in the Constitution, it talks about responsibility for individuals and for our state, and acting in a way that protects our land and people for now and for future generations too. These are all of us plaintiffs, and I feel very lucky to have gotten to work with all of them. It's a great group, and we all really care about our state and people here, and feel like we this is something that we need to do to protect ourselves and everyone. So in the lead up to trial, again, we filed in 2020, filed our complaint. We did depositions, gathered evidence in that 3-year period before we got to go to trial. In this case, we we wanted declaratory relief from the court. So we wanted the court to say that our state was acting unconstitutionally and violating our constitutional rights, such as to a clean and healthful environment. And then also a stable climate system is included in the right to a clean and healthful environment. We specifically challenged two statutes. One was the Montana State Energy Policy, and that was repealed right before our trial because of this case. The other was the limitation, or the Montana Environmental Policy Act limitation that talked about, it said that Montana could not consider greenhouse gases or climate change when conducting environmental reviews for like fossil fuel activities, for example. There was a lot of state resistance to the case. They tried to get it dismissed 8 times before we finally got to go to trial. But we did get to go, and this was the first ever youth constitutional climate trial, or climate case to go to trial in the US. And we had a full week of plaintiff and expert testimony on the case. There's a lot of media around it, and plaintiffs got to talk with media outlets if we wanted to tell our stories and talk about the case. And people from all over the world have reached out to me in support of what we're doing. So with these are some overviews of the plaintiff or expert testimony, and all of our experts did this work pro bono or without pay because they so strongly believe that this is what needs to happen. And so our first expert, Maynard Nellingson, she was the youngest delegate at the 1972 Montana Constitutional Convention. She helped write the provision, the right to a clean, healthful environment, and she, in the courtroom, said that the environment is no longer clean and healthful. She also talked about just how everyday Montanans helped write that constitution, like ranchers and clergy and educators, businessmen, politicians. And so that constitution really represents what we value and part of our history. So we're trying to carry that forward now. And just to summarize quickly, some of our different expert testimony, we had climate scientists talk about climate change. We had scientists talking about glaciers in Montana, or freshwater ecosystems and how that's impacted by climate change. Also, just about how Indigenous issues and how things like traditional practices and ceremonies have been affected by things like extreme heat that have affected people being able to attend those events. Also, experts talked about just the impacts to the mental and physical health of children, especially because youth are disproportionately affected by climate change. For example, just air pollution and more extreme heat. And youth will also experience the impacts of climate change for longer. And then one other thing is just the feasibility of transitioning away from fossil fuels and toward more renewable energy systems with wind, water, and solar by 2050. And Montana can do this, and it would save people money. And so that expert testimony was great, and I was really excited that the science got into the court record, and the ruling was based on that knowledge that we have. So for asks, we had that declaratory relief, and one thing with the science is that the scientists said that a stable climate system is equal to 350 parts per million of atmospheric CO2, and right now we're at around 420 parts per million, and so we need to bring that back down, where we already have dangerous levels of climate pollution in the atmosphere, and so we can't keep increasing our state emissions. So I think that's really important because some of the thresholds, like the 1.5 degrees of warming talked about in the Paris Agreement, that's a future level of warming, but we're already experiencing the dangerous impacts now. that's just the Earth energy balance. If you add more energy into a system, it's going to affect a lot of different spheres. One question that came up in court is, do our actions matter? The state was trying to argue that this is a global issue, and Montana is only one state that can't solve the whole problem itself. One great quote from Dr. Stephen Running, he's a Nobel Peace Prize winning climate scientist who spoke at trial. He talked about how significant social movements can be started, or often started, just by one or two people. And so for me, during trial, I was thinking about just responsibility a lot, like how as individuals and states, we have responsibility to take the actions that we can moving forward. Um, and that will lead to ripple effects, of course. So with the ruling, it was just unbelievable. And Judge Kathy Seeley, she ruled in the favor of us plaintiffs and agreed that Montana was acting unconstitutionally, contributing to climate change, and that every ton of greenhouse gas emissions matters, that we need to get back to a stable climate system. And yeah, so the ruling was broader than we could have really hoped for, and it is legally binding as of now. That court order is put into effect, and the state tried to get it stayed, but were unsuccessful. Right now, the state has appealed the case to the Montana Supreme Court. It was at district court, um, and so right now we're filing briefs back and forth, but we'll go into oral arguments sometime this summer, and that will be this case. But right now, this was the nation's first ruling that declared laws promoting fossil fuels unconstitutional, which was really exciting, and it did make some systematic change. So Montana cannot continue its actions, increasing the state's greenhouse gas emissions that lead to climate change and affect us youth plaintiffs. So that's really exciting, and Montana does have to follow that court order and the Constitution. Um, and we expect that this case will affect future climate litigation. Some of the other cases going on with our Children's Trust are is this summer another state case in Hawaii will go to trial, which is really exciting and one to look out for. And that's against the Hawaii Department of Transportation. And they're hoping to get to zero emissions in the state by 2045. Also, there are two federal youth constitutional climate cases. One is Juliana versus US, and they filed in 2015 and have been trying to get to go to trial for those 9 years. Right now, the DOJ, Department of Justice, they are in their 22nd attempt to kill the case. And so, if you want to support that, you can email the Biden administration or the DOJ and just support that case going to trial. Because no other case in US history has faced that level of government persecution. And it's really important that these stories can be told and the science listened to when we're making these decisions that are going to affect everyone in our nation. And the other one is Genesis versus EPA, Environmental Protection Agency. That's California youth, and what they're saying is that the EPA has been discounting the economic value of their lives and futures of the youth plaintiffs because they make decisions on how much climate pollution they allow us to emit. And so that's obviously affecting youth more. So those are a bunch of cases to look out for. One thing I want to point out is just recently, the European Court of Human Rights, they had the first successful international court ruling on climate change, and just saying that countries do have an obligation to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions to protect people. So that's a lot of successful climate litigation happening in the world right now, and there's a bunch of other ongoing cases, which are really exciting to see, but there's a long way to go. And working on this case, what's been really encouraging for me and what gives me a lot of hope for the future is working with so many amazing people working to protect us now and for the future. And so that's been great to see. And we need people from all perspectives and backgrounds working on um, challenges like this in the world. For climate change, you need people like ranchers and lawyers and businessmen and artists and writers all working together and adding our own just what we can, our inputs and perspectives. And um, so I guess just with that, I hope that can helps carry some conversations forward, and all we can do is keep taking the next steps. So thank you for having me talk.